feeling drained, God is about to strengthen you. Vertical bar, powerful motivation for your hardest season. My dear friend, I want you to stop everything you are doing right now and receive what I am about to pour into your spirit, because I believe with every fiber of my being that you did not find these words by accident. You did not arrive at this moment through some meaningless chain of events that had nothing to do with the sovereign and loving hand of the God who sees everything, knows everything, and arranges everything according to the counsel of his perfect and unfailing will. No. The God who spoke the universe into existence with a single word, the God who numbers every star and calls every one of them by name, the God who was present at the moment of your very first breath and who has been intimately involved in every single moment of your journey from that day to this one, that God arranged this moment. He saw exactly where you were going to be when these words reached you. He knew the specific state of your heart and the specific weight of what you have been carrying and the specific depth of the exhaustion that has settled into your spirit through the season you have been navigating. And he directed your steps to this precise place at this precise moment because he has something he needs to speak directly into the center of the drained and the depleted and the barely holding on place where many of you are right now. And what he wants to speak is not a vague and general encouragement that things will eventually get better in some unspecified way at some unspecified time. It is a specific, targeted, personally directed declaration that is aimed with precision at the exact place where the depletion is deepest and the exhaustion is most real, and the question of whether you have what it takes to keep going is most honestly and most urgently pressing. He says this to you today: I see you. I know what this season has cost you. I know how long you have been carrying what you have been carrying. I know the specific weight of the specific burdens that have accumulated through the specific season that has brought you to this place of feeling genuinely, deeply, bone-level drained. And I want you to know that what you are feeling right now is not evidence of weakness. It is not evidence of insufficient faith. It is not evidence that you have failed in some spiritual dimension that a more disciplined believer would have maintained. It is the honest, inevitable, completely understandable response of a human soul that has been giving more than it has been receiving for longer than was sustainable, and I am about to change that. God is about to strengthen you, not eventually. Not after you have rested enough and prayed enough and processed enough and performed enough spiritual disciplines to deserve the restoration. Now, in this season, in the specific state of depletion that you are in right now, before the circumstances that produced the exhaustion have changed, before the situation that has been draining you has resolved, before the season that has cost so much has ended, right now, in the middle of all of it, God is about to demonstrate his strength in the places of your greatest weakness in ways that are going to leave you not just restored to your previous level of capacity, but advanced to a level of spiritual strength and resilience and genuine God-powered living that the pre-exhaustion season never produced. This is not just the end of the draining season. This is the beginning of the strongest season of your life. Receive it, all of it, with every part of your heart that still has the capacity to receive, and let what God is about to pour into you transform the draining season into the training ground that produces the person capable of carrying everything he has been preparing to release. Let me begin by speaking honestly and without minimization about what feeling drained actually means and what it actually costs a human being who is navigating it, because one of the most isolating dimensions of genuine exhaustion is the sense that you are not supposed to feel the way you feel. That someone with genuine faith should be drawing constantly from the inexhaustible well of God's strength and should therefore never reach the point of feeling genuinely depleted. That the exhaustion itself is a spiritual failure. A sign that something is fundamentally wrong, not just with your circumstances, but with your relationship with God. I want to dismantle that idea completely before we go any further, because it is not only untrue, it is actively harmful to the person who carries it. It takes the genuine, human, completely understandable experience of being depleted by a hard season and adds to it the additional burden of shame about the depletion. And a person who is already exhausted, and who is also carrying shame about being exhausted, is a person who is navigating their depletion with one hand tied behind their back. Feeling drained is not a spiritual failure, it is a human reality. And it is a human reality that the scriptures address with far more honesty and far more compassion than the performance culture of modern faith sometimes allows for. The greatest men and women of faith in all of Scripture experienced genuine, profound, sometimes debilitating exhaustion. And God did not rebuke them for it. He met them in it with the specific provision that the specific nature of their specific exhaustion required. Elijah, after the greatest demonstration of divine power that any prophet of his generation had witnessed, sat under a juniper tree and asked God to let him die, not from a place of irreverence or rebellion, from a place of genuine, complete, I have nothing left to give depletion. The man who called down fire from heaven could not find the energy to face the next day. The man whose faith had just moved in ways that stunned an entire nation was so exhausted that death felt preferable to continuing. And God's response to Elijah in that place was not a lecture on the importance of maintaining spiritual strength. It was not a rebuke about the inconsistency of his faith. It was an angel, and bread, and water, and the invitation to rest. God met the exhausted prophet at the exact place of his exhaustion with the exact provision that the exhaustion required. He tended to the depleted body before he addressed the depleted spirit. He let Elijah rest before he gave him the next assignment. He fed him twice before he sent him forward. Because the journey ahead, God said, is too great for you in your current condition. And the God who designed the human body understood that the human body in its current condition needed tending before it could receive what was coming. That is the God who is meeting you in your depletion today. Not with a performance standard that your exhaustion is failing to meet, with the bread and the water and the rest and the specific provision that your specific state of depletion requires. And with the declaration that what he is about to do in your life from this place of exhaustion is going to be the most extraordinary demonstration of divine strength through human weakness that your story has ever contained. Some of you are drained because you have been giving without receiving for a very long time. You have been the person in every relationship and every environment and every season who gives, who shows up, who pours out, who stays when everyone else leaves, who encourages when no one is encouraging you, who serves when no one is serving you, who holds space for other people's pain while quietly and privately managing your own without the same quality of holding from the people around. When you are operating as the source, when you are generating the love and the strength and the encouragement and the provision from within your own finite human resources, depletion is inevitable. You were never designed to sustain that level of output from your own reserves. No human being is. The finite cannot sustainably produce at the level that infinite need requires. But when you are operating as a channel, when you are staying connected to the God who is the source and allowing what flows from him to flow through you, rather than from you, the dynamic changes completely. Because the source does not run dry. The God who is the ultimate source of everything you have been giving is not limited by the limitations that make your human reserves finite. He is infinite. His supply does not diminish. His capacity does not deplete. And a channel that is genuinely connected to that infinite source does not run dry regardless of how much flows through it. The exhaustion you are feeling is the exhaustion of someone who has been operating as the source when you were always designed to be a channel. And the strengthening that God is about to do in your life is not simply the refilling of the finite reservoir that has been emptied by the demand of the giving. It is the reconnection of the channel to the infinite source. The restoration of the flow that makes the giving sustainable because it is no longer coming from you, it is coming through you, from the one who is inexhaustible. Some of you are drained because the season you have been navigating has been marked by relentless difficulty that has not let up. Not one dramatic crisis that arrived and then passed and left you with the work of recovering from the impact. The particular kind of exhaustion that comes from a sustained season of low-grade but persistent difficulty that never peaks dramatically enough to demand urgent attention, but that never fully resolves either. The grinding weariness of dealing with the same challenges week after week without the resolution that would allow you to actually recover. The accumulation of difficulty upon difficulty until the weight that any single challenge would have been manageable in isolation has compounded into something that feels almost impossible to bear. Some of you know this kind of exhaustion intimately. The financial pressure that has been present for so long that you have almost forgotten what it felt like not to do the same mathematics every month and come up with the same insufficient answer. The relational strain that has been running at a low level of pain for so long that you have adjusted to it as a permanent feature of your daily experience rather than as something that is going to eventually resolve. The health challenge that has become such a consistent companion that you have stopped expecting to be fully free of it and have simply incorporated its management into the permanent infrastructure of your life. The weariness that comes from this kind of sustained low-grade difficulty is different from the weariness of an acute crisis. It is quieter, less dramatic, less likely to produce the community rallying and the prayer support and the tangible expressions of care that a visible crisis tends to generate, because from the outside, to the people who are watching your life without full access to the internal experience of it, you appear to be managing fine. You are still showing up, still functioning, still maintaining the relationships and the responsibilities and the appearance of someone who is navigating their season without being overwhelmed by it. But on the inside you know differently. On the inside you know how much the functioning is costing you, how much energy it takes to produce the appearance of managing when the actual experience is one of barely managing, how many times in a day you reach for a reserve of strength and find it thinner than you need it to be. How many times you go to bed not with the restful anticipation of genuine recovery but with the weary awareness that tomorrow is going to require everything today required, and that the recovery from today is not going to be complete by the time tomorrow arrives. I see you in that place. And I want to speak into it with the specific truth that I believe God has arranged for you to hear on this specific day. The sustained difficulty that has been the source of this sustained exhaustion is not outside His knowledge. He has been present through every day of it. And the weariness that has accumulated through the season is not outside His compassion. He is not looking at your exhaustion with the frustration of someone whose expectations you are failing to meet. He is looking at it with the tenderness of a father who sees his child in genuine need, and who is moved by that need to provide exactly what the need requires. And what He is about to provide is not just enough to get you through another day of the same sustained difficulty. He is about to provide what Isaiah 40 calls the renewal of strength, the specific, targeted, supernaturally generated renewal that does not just restore what was there before the exhaustion, but that produces a new level of capacity. A new level of spiritual strength and physical resilience and emotional endurance that is qualitatively different from what existed before, because it has been forged through the specific fire of the specific season that produced the depletion. Mount up with wings as eagles, run and not be weary. Walk and not faint. Those are not the metaphors of someone who has been restored to their previous baseline. They are the metaphors of someone who has been elevated. Someone who has crossed through the exhaustion into a dimension of strength that operates above the level at which ordinary weariness can find purchase. Someone whose capacity has been enlarged by the very process that felt like it was diminishing it. That is what is coming for you. Some of you are drained because you have been in a season of spiritual warfare that has been more intense and more personal and more specifically targeted at the things that matter most to you than anything you have previously experienced. The attacks have not been random or general. They have been precise. They have found the specific vulnerabilities in your spiritual armor at the specific moments when those vulnerabilities were most exposed. They have targeted the relationships that were most central to your well-being and the finances that were the foundation of your stability and the health that was the physical infrastructure of your capacity to fulfill your calling and the peace that was the defining quality of your inner life. And the sustained nature of the warfare, the fact that it has been ongoing rather than episodic, the fact that it has not let up in the way that a season of acute spiritual battle tends to eventually let up, has produced a specific kind of depletion that those who have not experienced it cannot fully appreciate. The depletion of someone who has been fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously for an extended period of time. who has been required to maintain their spiritual defenses and their spiritual offenses and their basic functional life all at the same time, without the recovery time that alternating periods of battle and peace would provide. I want to speak to you from that place of warfare weariness with a truth that I believe is going to reframe the entire experience of what you have been going through. Some of you are drained because you have been in a season of spiritual warfare that has been more intense and more personal and more specifically targeted at the things that matter most to you than anything you have previously experienced. The attacks have not been random or general. They have been precise. They have found the specific vulnerabilities in your spiritual armor at the specific moments when those vulnerabilities were most exposed. They have targeted the relationships that were most central to your well-being, and the finances that were the foundation of your stability, and the health that was the physical infrastructure of your capacity to fulfill your calling, and the peace that was the defining quality of your inner life. And the sustained nature of the warfare, the fact that it has been ongoing rather than episodic, the fact that it has not let up in the way that a season of acute spiritual battle tends to eventually let up, has produced a specific kind of depletion that those who have not experienced it cannot fully appreciate. The depletion of someone who has been fighting on multiple fronts simultaneously for an extended period of time, who has been required to maintain their spiritual defenses and their spiritual offenses and their basic functional life all at the same time, without the recovery time that alternating periods of battle and peace would provide. I want to speak to you from that place of warfare weariness with a truth that I believe is going to reframe the entire experience of what you have been going through. The intensity of the warfare is evidence of the significance of what is being fought for. The enemy does not deploy his most comprehensive and his most sustained assault against lives and destinies that pose an insignificant threat to his purposes. He reserves his most relentless and his most specifically targeted warfare for the ones whose fully activated purpose and whose fully released calling and whose fully expressed anointing is going to be the most destructive to the kingdom he is trying to build. The fact that the warfare has been as intense as it has been is evidence that what you carry is significant. What you are called to is threatening enough to the enemy's agenda to warrant his most comprehensive opposition. And while that truth does not make the warfare less exhausting in the immediate experience of it, it does completely transform the meaning of it. It takes the experience from being something that is happening to you and makes it something that is happening because of what you carry. And those are very different things. Something that is happening to you is a victim experience. Something that is happening because of what you carry is a warrior experience. And warriors who have been in sustained battle and who are depleted by the battle are not weak warriors. They are experienced warriors, tested warriors, warriors whose capacity has been proven by what they have endured, and who are more dangerous to the enemy's purposes coming out of the battle than they were going into it. You are not a victim of what you have been through. You are a warrior who has been in sustained battle and who is about to receive the reinforcement that God has been holding in reserve for exactly this moment in the fight, because the God who is for you is not unaware of the battle you have been waging. He has been watching every engagement. He has been counting every step you have taken in the direction of faith rather than retreat. And he has been preparing the reinforcement that the exhausted warrior needs at exactly the moment when the exhaustion is most acute and the enemy is most confidently expecting the retreat that would seal his temporary advantage into a permanent defeat. The reinforcement is coming. The strengthening is on its way, and the warrior who was exhausted at the end of the sustained battle is about to discover that the God who permitted the battle was also preparing through it the capacity to carry what the victory of the battle is going to release. I want to speak now about what God's strengthening actually looks like in the life of a person who is navigating genuine depletion, because the strengthening of God is not always dramatic. It is not always the sudden infusion of supernatural energy that makes the exhaustion disappear overnight as though it was never there. Sometimes it is, and when it is glorious and unmistakable, and produces the kind of testimony that everyone around you can see. But sometimes the strengthening of God is more subtle than that, more gradual, more woven into the fabric of the ordinary, rather than arriving as an interruption of it. The first form that God's strengthening takes is the strengthening of your inner conviction. The renewal of your certainty that what you are doing matters, that the purpose you are carrying is real, that the calling you have been faithful to through the exhausting season is worth the faithfulness it has required, that the God you have been trusting is worthy of the trust, that the season you are in, as exhausting as it has been, is producing something in you and through you that is genuinely significant in the eternal scheme of things. This inner conviction is not the same as feeling good about your circumstances. You can be genuinely convinced of the significance of what you are doing, and the faithfulness of the God you are serving, and the realness of the purpose you are advancing, while simultaneously finding the season genuinely hard and the exhaustion genuinely real. Conviction and comfort are not the same thing. And the strengthening of your conviction, the renewal of the inner certainty that keeps you moving forward even when the moving forward is genuinely costly, is one of the most significant and most practically transformative forms of divine strengthening available to the person in the hard season. The second form that God's strengthening takes is the strengthening of your relationships, the sending of the right people at the right moments, not necessarily the people you would have chosen or the people you would have expected, but the people God knows are carrying exactly what you need in the moment you most need it, the unexpected conversation that speaks directly into the most depleted place. The person who shows up with a provision or an encouragement or a presence that is so specifically aligned with your specific need that the only adequate explanation is that God arranged it. The community of genuine support that God is building around you in this season, in ways that may look different from the community you had before, but that is more genuinely fitted to the specific nature of the specific person you are becoming through this season. The third form that God's strengthening takes is the strengthening of your prayer life, not necessarily the prayer life that was characterized by more words or more hours or more dramatic spiritual experiences, but the prayer life that goes deeper, that is more genuinely honest, that brings to God what is actually true about your experience, rather than what you think should be true or what sounds more spiritually impressive. The prayer that rises from the exact depleted place where you actually are, and that says, God, I have nothing left and I need you to be everything right now, in a way that I have perhaps not needed before. That kind of prayer, the prayer of genuine desperation rather than of performed spiritual adequacy, is the prayer that moves the heart of God in the most profound and the most immediately responsive way. Because God is not moved by impressive prayers, He is moved by honest ones, by the prayers that cost something to pray, by the prayers that arise from the place of genuine need rather than the place of apparent spiritual competence, and the prayer that rises from the place of genuine exhaustion, that says, God, I cannot do this without you, and I am not pretending otherwise. That prayer lands in the heart of God with a weight and a specificity that produces the most precisely targeted response that divine strengthening can provide. The fourth form that God's strengthening takes is the strengthening of your perspective, the gradual, progressive, often imperceptible shift in how you see your situation that changes your experience of it without the situation itself having changed. The ability to see the difficulty in the context of the eternal rather than only in the context of the temporal, to hold the hard season within the framework of the larger story that God is telling through your life. To receive the exhaustion not as evidence that the journey is destroying you, but as evidence that the journey is forming you. And to begin, however tentatively and however partially, to see the season the way God sees it, rather than only through the lens of the experience of being in it. This shift in perspective is not denial. It is not the pretending that the difficulty is less than it is, or that the exhaustion is not real. It is the receiving of what Paul calls the renewing of your mind, the replacing of the anxiety-producing, despair-threatening, identity-undermining interpretation of what is happening with the truth-based, God-grounded, eternally oriented interpretation that produces peace and endurance and the kind of genuine hope that is not shaken by the continued presence of the difficulty, because it is not rooted in the removal of the difficulty. It is rooted in the character of the God who is present in it. I want to take you now to the most comprehensive biblical declaration about divine strengthening that exists in all of Scripture. I want to take you to Isaiah 40, verses 28 through 31, because I believe that these verses are not just ancient poetry recorded in the pages of an old book. They are the living word of a living God speaking directly into the specific experience of the specific person who is reading them in the specific state of genuine exhaustion that the specific season has produced. Do you not know? Have you not heard? The Lord is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He will not grow tired or weary, and his understanding no one can fathom. He gives strength to the weary, and increases the power of the weak. Even youths grow tired and weary, and young men stumble and fall. But those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. Do you not know? Have you not heard? These opening questions are not rhetorical flourishes. They are the acknowledgement by God himself that there are seasons in the lives of his people when what they know and what they have heard about his character becomes temporarily obscured by the weight of what they are experiencing. When the accumulated pressure of a hard season can make the truths that were once vivid and accessible in the believer's spirit feel distant and theoretical and harder to connect with emotionally than the exhausting reality of what is immediately present. And the response of God to that temporary obscuring of what is known and heard is not frustration. It is not the withdrawal of his presence until the believer pulls themselves together and returns to a more adequate spiritual state. It is the patient, compassionate, specific reminder of who he actually is. He is the everlasting God, the creator of the ends of the earth. He does not grow tired. He does not grow weary. His understanding is not limited by the limitations that define the understanding of the creatures he made. And then the declaration that changes everything for the person in the hard season. He gives strength to the weary, not the strong, the weary. He increases the power of the weak, not the powerful, the weak. The very conditions that feel like disqualifications from the experience of divine strengthening are revealed in this passage to be the precise conditions that qualify you for it. You do not receive his strengthening because you have maintained your own strength at an impressive level. You receive it because you have run out of your own strength and have arrived at the place of genuine need that positions you to receive what he has always had available for exactly this moment. Even youths grow tired and weary. Even young men stumble and fall. The natural strength that human beings carry in their most physically capable seasons is not enough to sustain the weight of what life in a fallen world requires. Everyone runs out. Everyone reaches the limit of their own natural capacity. And the person who reaches that limit is not at a spiritual disadvantage. They are at the threshold of the most significant spiritual experience available in the life of a believer, the experience of being genuinely dependent on God for the strength that the next step requires. The experience of discovering that the strength he provides to the genuinely dependent is qualitatively different from anything that natural human capacity can produce, but those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. The word hope here is not the weak and uncertain hoping of a person who wishes for a positive outcome without any basis for confidence in it. It is the strong and anchored waiting and trusting and expectant resting in the character of the God who has always been faithful and who is being trusted to be faithful again in this specific season. It is the posture of a person who has run out of their own strength and who has consciously and deliberately transferred the weight of what they need from their own reserves to the inexhaustible resources of the God who said, "I give strength to the weary, and I increase the power of the weak." They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. These are not the metaphors of someone who has been barely maintained at their previous level of capacity. They are the metaphors of someone who has been elevated. Eagles do not flap against the resistance of the wind at ground level. They find the thermal currents, and they rise above the level where the resistance is greatest, and they soar with an effortlessness that the ground level struggle could never produce. And that is the picture of what God's strengthening of the genuinely dependent person looks like, not the grinding, effortful struggle at ground level maintenance of someone who is barely managing. The elevated thermal current riding, soaring above the level of the ordinary exhaustion that the divine supply of strength produces. That is what is coming for you, not eventually. The promise of Isaiah 40 is not a promise for a vague future time when the conditions are more favorable. It is a promise for now, for the exact place of genuine depletion that you are in right now, for the person who is genuinely out of their own strength and who is genuinely choosing to hope in the Lord rather than in the recovery of their own natural capacity. Hope in Him right now. In the depletion, not after the depletion has lifted, in it, and receive the soaring that comes not from the recovery of your own strength, but from the engagement of patience, not the surface-level tolerance of minor inconvenience, the deep, tested, proven through genuine difficulty patience that knows from personal experience what it costs to keep choosing trust when trust is the most expensive option available. The patience that has been in the fire long enough to know that the fire does not last forever, and that what comes out of it is worth the cost of the time in it. That kind of patience cannot be learned in comfortable seasons. It can only be forged in the hard ones. Compassion. Not the intellectual acknowledgement that other people's suffering deserves empathy. The visceral, personally grounded, I know from the inside what this feels like compassion that is the most powerful form of human connection available in the ministry of presence to the suffering. The compassion that the person in their own hard season most needs from the people around them is the compassion of someone who has been in the same place and who carries in their own body and their own spirit the memory of what it felt like to be there. Your hard season is developing in you the most powerful compassion available for the people you are called to serve, because you will never speak to suffering people from a comfortable distance again. You will speak from the inside of having been there, and that kind of speaking changes things. Dependence on God, perhaps the most significant quality that the hard season is developing. The genuine, not just theologically affirmed but practically lived dependence on God that comes from having genuinely run out of your own resources and having discovered that His were sufficient. That He was present in the place where your own capacity ran out, that the strength He supplied was real and tangible and qualitatively different from anything you had previously accessed. And that the God who sustained you through the hardest moments of the hardest season you have ever navigated is the God who can be trusted with everything, because He proved Himself trustworthy with the thing that would have destroyed you if He had not been there. You cannot manufacture that quality of dependence in a comfortable season. You can affirm it theologically. You can declare it as a conviction. But the kind of dependence that knows from personal experience that God is sufficient, that has the evidence of His faithfulness written into the memory of the body and the spirit, that dependence is forged only through the genuine experience of needing Him completely and finding Him completely present. The hard season is not only draining you, it is developing you. And the person who emerges from it is going to be more deeply rooted and more genuinely compassionate and more authentically dependent on God and more powerfully equipped to fulfill the specific calling that God placed on your life than the pre-hard season version could ever have been. Now I want to speak very specifically about what the strengthening that God is about to release is going to look like in the specific areas of your life that have been most drained by this season. In your spirit, the strengthening is going to look like a fresh and tangible sense of God's presence that breaks through the numbness that extended difficulty can produce in the spiritual sensitivity of even the most genuinely committed believer. There is a kind of spiritual numbness that is not backsliding. It is not the diminishment of genuine faith or genuine love for God. It is the temporary muffling of spiritual sensitivity that happens when the sustained pressure of a hard season demands so much of the person's cognitive and emotional and spiritual resources that the capacity for the kind of vibrant and emotionally engaged spirituality that characterized easier seasons becomes temporarily inaccessible. God is about to break through that numbness, not with a dramatic and overwhelming spiritual experience that bypasses the ordinary, but with the specific, precisely targeted, personally directed touch of His presence that is unmistakable because it reaches exactly the place that has felt most inaccessible. The place where the fire of genuine passion for Him has been burning lower. The place where the prayer that once came easily has become an effort. The place where the worship that once flowed from genuine feeling has been sustained by genuine will rather than genuine emotion. That place is where the strengthening is going to touch first. In your relationships, the strengthening is going to look like the arrival of the specific people who carry the specific qualities that your specific depletion most needs. The friend who shows up without being asked. The conversation that speaks directly into the most private dimension of the exhaustion. The community that forms around you in ways that are qualitatively different from the community that surrounded the previous season, because it is fitted to the specific version of you that the hard season has been forming. And the people who were in your life before the hard season, who are going to witness what it has produced in you, and who are going to find in what it produced the specific quality of presence and depth and genuine compassion that they have been most needing in their own journey. In your purpose and your calling, the strengthening is going to look like a clarity and a focus and a sense of specific direction that the diffuse and pressured season made difficult to maintain. The hard season has a way of stripping away the non-essential and leaving what is most genuinely central. The things you were pursuing that were peripheral to the core of your calling have been removed by the pressure of the season. And what remains, what has survived the stripping away, is the most pure and the most genuinely aligned with God's declaration expression of who you are and what you are here to do. And the strengthening that is coming is going to energize that core calling with a focus and a clarity and a renewed sense of urgency that the pre-hard season version of your purpose pursuit did not have. In your faith, the strengthening is going to look like a quality of trust that is qualitatively different from any trust you have previously expressed. Because the trust that comes through the hard season, the trust that has been tested and has held, the trust that is based not on the pleasant experience of God's favor in comfortable seasons, but on the proven in the fire experience of His faithfulness in impossible ones, that trust is the most powerful and the most resilient form of faith available to a human being. It does not require pleasant circumstances to sustain itself. It does not need visible evidence to maintain its confidence. It has been to the edge of what it could sustain, and has found that even at the edge, the God who was being trusted was there. And the memory of that edge experience is a faith-sustaining resource that no comfortable season could ever have produced. I want to speak now about something that I believe is critically important for the person who is receiving this word in the specific state of exhaustion that brought them to it. I want to speak about rest, not rest as the absence of activity, rest as a spiritual posture. Rest as the active, faith-filled choice to release the weight of managing your own situation and to allow God to carry what you have been carrying. Matthew 11:28-30 contains what may be the most tender invitation in all of Scripture. Come to me, all you who are weary and burdened, and I will give you rest. Take my yoke upon you and learn from me, for I am gentle and humble in heart, and you will find rest for your souls. For my yoke is easy, and my burden is light. Come to me, all you who are weary, not some of you who are weary. Not the ones who are weary for acceptable reasons, all who are weary, including the ones who are weary because they have been pushing harder than wisdom allowed, including the ones who are weary because they took on burdens that were not theirs to carry, including the ones who are weary because the decisions they made contributed to the weight of the season they are navigating. All of you, without condition. Without the requirement that you arrive having already sorted out why the weariness happened and what you are going to do differently to prevent it from happening again. Just come, weary as you are, burdened as you are, depleted as you are. Come, and I will give you rest, not eventually. Not after you have demonstrated your worthiness to receive the rest by producing an adequate level of spiritual performance while weary. I will give you rest now. The rest is the gift, not the achievement, not the reward, the gift that is released the moment you come. The moment you stop trying to manage the situation from within your own depleted reserves and start genuinely resting in the reality that He is the manager, He is the carrier. He is the one who has the full picture and the full resource and the full capacity to sustain what you cannot sustain in your own strength. Take my yoke upon you. This invitation is often understood as a burden, but it is actually the opposite. The yoke that Jesus offers is not a heavier version of the burden you are already carrying. It is the invitation to be yoked to the one who is carrying the weight. When two animals are yoked together and one of them is significantly stronger than the other, the stronger one carries the majority of the load and the weaker one simply stays in step. The invitation to take his yoke is the invitation to stay in step with the one who is doing the carrying. To release the frantic, exhausting, going nowhere effort of trying to carry what was never designed for human strength alone, and to get in step with the one whose strength is inexhaustible. Find rest for your souls. Soul rest is different from body rest. Your body can rest while your soul is still straining. Your body can be lying down while your mind is running the same calculations that have been running for months without producing a different answer. Soul rest is the rest of the part of you that is deepest and most essential and most fundamentally in need of the specific kind of rest that only God can provide. And it is available to you on this specific day, in this specific season, from the specific God who specifically invites you to find it in Him. Come, rest, and from the place of genuine rest, receive the strengthening that God is about to release into every dimension of your depleted life. I want to speak now about the testimony that the hard season is producing, because the exhaustion that you have been experiencing and the depletion that has brought you to this place are not just personal experiences that happened to you. They are the raw material of a testimony that God is crafting through your life that is going to serve His purposes in the lives of people far beyond the circle of your own immediate experience. The testimony of having been genuinely, deeply, bone-level drained and having found God faithful in the draining. The testimony of having run out of your own strength and having discovered His. The testimony of the hard season that did not break you, but that developed in you the specific qualities that make you the most equipped and the most genuinely prepared version of yourself that has ever existed. That testimony is not just your story. It is a gift to every person who has ever been in the same place and who needs the evidence that God is present in the draining and that the strengthening He provides is real, and that the person who comes out the other side of the hard season is more, not less, than the person who went in. There are people in your life right now who are in their own hard season, who are experiencing their own version of the depletion that you have been navigating, who are struggling to believe that God is present in their draining or that the strengthening He promises is available to them in their specific state of genuine exhaustion. And the most powerful thing you can offer those people is not a strategy or a scripture or a spiritual discipline. It is the testimony of your own experience, the living proof that the God who declares He gives strength to the weary keeps that declaration, that the promise of Isaiah 40 is not ancient poetry but present reality, that the invitation of Matthew 11 is not a theological concept but a genuinely available experience. Lord, I pray for the perspective shift that transforms the experience of the hard season without the hard season having to end first. Give them the ability to hold the depletion within the context of what you are producing through it, to see the testimony being formed, to sense the qualities being developed, to receive the formation that the fire is accomplishing even while the fire is still burning, and to trust with the confidence of people who know your character that what is coming out of the fire is going to be more than what went in. Lord, I pray for the community around them, the specific people you are positioning to come alongside them in this season, with the specific provision and encouragement and genuine presence that the depletion requires. Send them, Lord. Arrange the encounters, orchestrate the connections, and let the people who show up in the lives of the depleted believers who are receiving this prayer be recognized as your provision, as the bread and water that you sent through your angel to the exhausted Elijah, as the specific, personally tailored, I know exactly what you need provision of a God who is not unaware of the depletion and who is not indifferent to it. And Lord, I pray for the hope, the specific, anchored Isaiah 40 kind of hope that is not wishful thinking, but is the deliberate, faith-based, will-driven choice to place the weight of what they need on your inexhaustible supply, rather than on their exhausted own. Let that hope take root in every depleted heart that is receiving this prayer today. Let it grow from something tentative into something settled, from something they are choosing with effort into something that begins to feel more natural than the anxiety and the fear that it is replacing. And let the fruit of that hope be exactly what your word declares it will be, the renewal of strength, the soaring above the level of ordinary exhaustion into the dimension of divine supply that operates beyond what natural capacity can access. You are faithful, Lord. To every person who is tired of their own tiredness and who is bringing that tiredness to you right now in the most honest and the most genuinely needy prayer they have ever prayed, you are faithful to them. You are present with them. And the strengthening you are about to release into their lives is going to be unmistakable and undeniable and so thoroughly beyond what their own recovery could have produced that the only adequate response is worship. In the name of Jesus, amen. My dear friend, I want to close with one final declaration that I want you to carry with you from this moment forward, through every remaining day of the hard season, through the days when the strengthening feels more tangible, and through the days when it feels less so but is still happening. Through the days when the evidence of the renewal is more visible, and through the days when it is still mostly underground but unmistakably growing, through every day until the hard season gives way to the season of fullness that God has been building toward, through every draining moment. Carry this truth: you are not alone in this. You have never been alone in this. The God who formed you, and who knows the exact state of every dimension of your life in this exact moment, has been present through every moment of the depletion. He has counted every ounce of strength you gave when you did not feel like you had it to give. He has witnessed every act of faithfulness that the hard season required, and that you produced not because it was easy, but because it was right. He has seen the battle you have been fighting, and he has not been a passive observer. He has been with you in it, and he is about to demonstrate his faithfulness in your life, in ways that are going to make the hard season not just survivable in retrospect, but genuinely purposeful. You are feeling drained. That is real, and God honors the honesty of that reality. And God is about to strengthen you. That is also real, and it is as certain as the character of the God who declared it, because the God who promised does not break his word. And the word he spoke over you in Isaiah 40 is still as alive and as personally applicable, and as sovereignly backed by the full power of the God who spoke it, as it was the day it was first declared. Those who hope in the Lord will renew their strength. They will soar on wings like eagles. They will run and not grow weary. They will walk and not be faint. That is your promise. Receive it. Rest in it. And watch the God who gives strength to the weary transform the draining season into the launching pad for the strongest and the most fruitful and the most genuinely God-powered season of your entire life. The strengthening is here, and the best is still absolutely ahead.